The Cold War wasn't fought on battlefields alone. It was fought through politics, ideology, and fear. From Berlin to Cuba, from Korea to space, these are the 8 turning points that shaped half a century of global tension. Turning point 1. The Iron Curtain descends. In 1946, Winston Churchill delivered a warning the world could not ignore. He spoke of an iron curtain falling across Europe, a divide between the free West and the communist East. This was more than a metaphor. The Soviet Union was tightening its grip on Eastern Europe, and the United States began its policy of containment. This moment became the psychological beginning of the Cold War. Turning point 2. The Berlin Blockade and airlift. In 1948, the Soviets cut off all land access to West Berlin, hoping to force the Allies out. But the West refused. For nearly a year, American and British planes flew around the clock, over 200,000 flights, delivering supplies and hope to 2 million people. When Stalin lifted the blockade, the world saw that the West could stand firm. Soon after, NATO was formed. Turning point 3. The Korean War. In 1950, the Cold War turned hot. North Korea, backed by the Soviet Union and later China, invaded the South. The United States and the United Nations intervened. The war was brutal, pushing forces back and forth across the peninsula. After 3 years of fighting, the border sat almost exactly where it began. But the message was global. The United States was willing to use military force to contain communism. Turning point 4. The launch of Sputnik. In October 1957, a small metal sphere shocked the world. Sputnik 1 became the first human-made satellite to orbit Earth. If the Soviets could launch a satellite, they could launch missiles. The United States responded by creating NASA and investing heavily in science and technology. The space race became a symbol of Cold War rivalry and the future of human progress. Turning point 5. The Cuban Missile Crisis. By 1962, nuclear weapons had become the ultimate pressure point. When U.S. reconnaissance discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba, the world froze. For 13 days, the United States and the Soviet Union stood on the brink of nuclear war. President Kennedy imposed a naval blockade. In the end, Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles, and the United States quietly withdrew its own from Turkey. It was the most dangerous moment of the Cold War and a turning point toward restraint. Turning point 6. Nixon visits China. In 1972, diplomacy reshaped global power. President Richard Nixon traveled to China, the first American president ever to visit a communist nation since World War II. The move shocked the world and fractured the communist bloc. It proved that diplomacy could shift the global balance in ways weapons could not. Turning point 7. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to support its collapsing communist government. The United States saw this as renewed Soviet aggression. Washington boycotted the Moscow Olympics and began secretly arming Afghan resistance fighters. The war dragged on for nearly a decade, draining Soviet resources and morale. Many historians see this as the beginning of the Soviet Union's decline. Turning point 8. The fall of the Berlin Wall. By 1989, the Soviet Union was struggling with internal pressure and economic decay. Protests spread across Eastern Europe. And then, on November 9th, the Berlin Wall opened. Crowds crossed freely, climbed it, and tore it down piece by piece. 2 years later, the Soviet Union itself dissolved, ending the Cold War with celebration rather than conflict. From the Iron Curtain to the Berlin Wall, these 8 turning points defined an era of fear, competition, and transformation. They reshaped alliances, technology, and the global balance of power. The Cold War ended not through victory or defeat, but through diplomacy, exhaustion, and the demands of people seeking freedom. Its echoes still shape our world today.